All right, back with our final video on imperialism. Um, Beautiful day, the sun's shining in. It's supposed to be 61 degrees in December. Very exciting. Last topic is the Roosevelt Corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, which is, if you're going in chronological order, was really the final thing that we're going to discuss in the imperialism unit. The Monroe Doctrine, which we didn't learn about in this class because it happened before the Civil War, but it's kind of important to understanding the Roosevelt Corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. So the Monroe Doctrine was issued by the United States way back in the 1820s, and it basically warned Europe to stay out of the Western Hemisphere. In other words, European countries were supposed to, according to the United States, supposed to stay out of North and South America. The reason why this was issued was because, this is kind of on the heels of whenever Britain, when France, when Spain had colonized a lot of, especially South America, but some in Central America, even some in North America. And so the United States in the 1820s, they were less than 50 years old as a country. We were feeling like we were becoming one of the big boys. We were not one of the big boys, but we issued this warning to Europe to stay out of our hemisphere. The funny thing was Europe didn't really want to have anything to do with our hemisphere at that time, just because of things that had been going on in Europe. Well, fast forward 80 years, and the Roosevelt Corollary to the Monroe Doctrine is basically an addition to the Monroe Doctrine. So instead of just warning Europe, hey, stay out of our hemisphere, the Roosevelt Corollary essentially was a declaration that the United States is kind of the unofficial police force of the Western Hemisphere. In other words, like if it's in our best interest, even if it's not in the United States, if it's close by because it's our hemisphere, we're going to take an interest in it. And I put a couple of examples on there. One, our involvement in building the Panama Canal. If you want to research a really interesting development in the history of the world, research the United States involvement in the building of the Panama Canal. This is a wild event because the Panamanian people were not independent at the time. They were controlled by the country of Colombia. Colombia didn't want the building of the canal. The Panamanian people ended up rebelling against the Colombian government because the United States told the Panamanians, hey, why don't you go ahead and rebel? We've got your back. They did. Colombia couldn't do anything about it. And eventually we've got a canal. I mean, it really is a truly fascinating revolutionary event backed by the United States. Another example would have been there was a revolution in Mexico, a really significant revolution where multiple men believed themselves to be the legitimate leader of Mexico. So it's like it's a civil war, but it's not like North versus South. It was like multiple military leaders who rounded up a bunch of supporters and fought other leaders. And it was really another very interesting world history event, but not one that we're going to go into a ton of detail for American history class, other than to say that the United States, out of all of the men who were vying for power in Mexico, of course, the United States had our favorites. And so we got involved to try to help ensure that, quote, the right guy won. And so both of those examples, ultimately, the United States got involved because of what we believe to be our best interest. And it wasn't always the best interests of the people of those particular countries. And so the consequence of the United States and the Roosevelt Corollary to the Monroe Doctrine is that it kind of established a precedent or a pattern of the United States getting involved in South or Central America at a time when the people of South and Central America didn't necessarily want the United States to be there. So was the building of the Panama Canal a good thing for the United States? Certainly. Was stability in Mexico a good thing for the United States? Certainly. At the expense of having a lot of people in Central and South America that did not look at this very favorably and did not look at the United States very favorably. So keep that in mind when you're trying to determine whether or not the United States was justified in its imperialistic involvement.